During family vacation in Miami, my parents left my 7-year-old daughter on a stranger's doorstep and drove away. I didn't shout. I took action. The next day, their lives started falling apart. I almost didn't answer the phone. Unknown number. 9 times out of 10, it's nothing important. But something made me pick up. And I think about that all the time. How different things would have been if I hadn't. If I'd let it ring out, finished what I was doing, and checked my voicemail later. Because that one choice, answering, was the moment everything changed. Hello? A woman's voice. Is this Dana? Yes. There's a little girl at my apartment. She's crying. She gave me your number and begged me to call. What's her name? She said, Ella. My stomach dropped. Put her on. Shuffling. Then my daughter's voice, shaky and small. Mommy? I'm here, I said quickly. I'm right here. They left me, she sobbed. They just left me here. They went to the beach with Paige and Lucas. I don't want to be here. I gripped the counter. Okay, sweetheart. You're safe. Stay with the lady who called me. I'll make sure someone comes for you. Back to the woman. Can you stay with her while I arrange someone? I'll call you back once I know. Yes, she'll be safe with me. I kept the phone to my ear, thinking fast. My first thought was to go myself. Get on a plane, fly to Miami, collect her. But that would take hours. By then, Ella would have spent an entire day stranded, wondering if I was coming. I thought about calling my parents, and dismissed it immediately. They were the ones who had left her. My sister Brianna, too. I couldn't trust them to undo what they'd done. So who? And then I remembered Paula, my aunt. She lived in Miami. We hadn't been as close in recent years, but when I was growing up, she was the one person in the family who made me feel safe. It wasn't guaranteed, but it was the only option I had. Please stay with Ella, I said. I'm going to call my aunt. I'll ring you back as soon as I know. Of course, the woman said. I hung up and dialed Paula. She picked up immediately. I told her what happened, gave her the address, and she was already on her way. That solved one problem, but another one was waiting. I called my mother's mobile. She answered quickly, almost cheerful. Dana. Oh, good. Don't worry, everything's fine. Fine. You left my daughter crying on someone's doorstep. Not someone, she corrected smoothly. Her father. A woman answered the door, I said. Not him. There was a pause on the other end. Long enough that I knew they'd heard me, but they weren't going to admit anything. My mother's voice came back, firm and dismissive. You'll thank us later. This is what's best for Ella. Best? The word scraped out of me. Leaving her crying on a doorstep? You're blowing it out of proportion, Brianna cut in. Her tone was sharp, smug, like she'd been waiting for her moment. You've kept her from him long enough. She needs her real father. We're helping. That was the word she chose. She was hysterical, I said. Do you even care about that? You're too sensitive, Dana, my mother said. I could hear the sigh in her voice, like I was a child being scolded. You always make everything a drama. One day you'll see we were right. I stared at the wall, the phone hot against my ear, listening to them justify what no sane person could justify. I ended the call, quietly. No shouting, no tears, just a decision settling into place. Because this wasn't about me anymore. This was about my daughter, and my family had no idea what they'd just started. When I tell people what happened in Miami, some ask, how could your parents do that? How could they think leaving Ella like that was okay? The truth is, it didn't come out of nowhere. Miami wasn't the first time my family decided they knew what was best for me or for my daughter. It was just the most dangerous, the most unforgivable. But that pattern, it had been there all along. Growing up, Brianna was the star. It wasn't always blatant. It was in little things, subtle things, the kind you can't quite prove when you're a child. But I felt it. If Brianna so much as hummed a tune, Mom and Dad clapped like she was destined for Broadway. If I got perfect grades, barely a nod. And when it came to decisions about my life, my parents made them for me. Always behind my back. Always with the same phrase, "You'll thank us later." They signed me up for a science fair I had no interest in. "You'll thank us later, Dana. It'll look good on college applications." They invited a girl I didn't like to a birthday party, convinced I'd become best friends with her. "You'll thank us later." I didn't thank them. What those choices taught me wasn't resilience or gratitude. It was that my opinion didn't matter, that someone else always knew better, that if I pushed back, I was being difficult. And Brianna, she never had those forced lessons. No clubs she didn't want, no friends she didn't like. Everything was tailored to her. By the time I was grown, the favoritism wasn't even subtle anymore. Then came Preston. When I married him, everyone told me I was lucky. He was handsome, well-dressed, came from money. The kind of man who picked up the tab for the whole table, who bought champagne for strangers just to make a scene. And he was generous, in a very particular way. He paid off part of my parents' mortgage. He slipped Brianna envelopes of cash when she complained about bills. At holidays, he turned up with expensive gifts, all smiles. To my family, Preston was a dream. To me, he was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Because behind closed doors, Preston was cold, detached. He had lovers, and he didn't even bother to hide it. The first time I confronted him, I was shaking. I'd found messages, clear as day. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "So what?" "What's the big deal? Look at your life, Dana. The house, the clothes, the money. You should be grateful." That was Preston in one line. He believed money excused everything. Betrayal, lies, disappearing for nights at a time. He thought throwing money around made him a good husband. And my parents? They ate it up. They didn't see the arrogance, the coldness. They saw the mortgage checks clearing and called it love. Meanwhile, I was breaking. When Ella was born, I thought maybe he'd change, that being a father might soften him. But nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. So I left. And here's where people sometimes ask, didn't you get a huge payout in the divorce? I didn't. There was a prenup. I walked away with almost nothing. And I didn't fight for more. Because here's the truth. I didn't want Preston anywhere near Ella. If I dragged him into court, demanded alimony or child support, he'd have demanded something back. Visitation, custody, time with her. And I didn't want my daughter anywhere near a man who thought cheating was no big deal, who thought money bought him a free pass. So I let it go. I took a promotion at work, stood on my own 2 feet, and promised myself Ella was better off without him. But to my parents, I wasn't brave. I wasn't protecting my child. I was selfish. Because when I left Preston, I didn't just cut him out of my life. I cut off their golden goose. And they never forgave me for that. After the divorce, I tried to keep the peace. Out of habit, out of guilt, out of that old voice in my head that said, a good daughter helps her family. So even though I wasn't rich, I sent my parents money every month toward their mortgage. I covered utilities when I could. Sometimes, when Brianna complained about school supplies or bills, I helped with Paige and Lucas. She'd studied art and worked as an art teacher in a school, and she wasn't making much, so she always seemed to need a little extra. It wasn't much. Nothing like Preston had given them, but it kept them afloat. Looking back, maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I should have cut them off then, but I didn't. Because I still wanted Ella to have grandparents. I still wanted her to grow up with cousins. And I thought, stupidly, that if I kept giving, maybe one day they'd finally see me as enough. Then came Stephen. If Preston was fire, all flash, all destruction, Stephen was solid ground. Middle class, steady, thoughtful. No yacht parties, no flashy suits. But he showed up. He kept his word. And he loved Ella like she was his own. He came into her life when she was 2. By the time she was old enough to remember, he was the one tucking her in at night, the one cheering at her school plays. And my parents? They never warmed to him. He's not her father, my mother would say. Like that settled it. It didn't matter that Preston had been a disaster, or that Stephen had been raising Ella for years. To them, biology was all that counted. Which brings me to Miami. It started like this. My parents and Brianna suddenly became very eager to take Ella on vacation with them. They talked about the beach, about cousins bonding, about how much fun she'd have with Paige and Lucas. "It'll be good for her," my mother said. "She'll love it," Brianna chimed in. "You need a break, Dana," my father added. It sounded so reasonable, almost normal. But there was something strange in how hard they pushed. They discouraged me from coming, told me it was quality time Ella needed with them, not me. I hesitated, but they made it sound like a gift. For Ella. For me. And maybe part of me wanted to believe them. So I agreed. I let her go. And 2 days later, the phone rang. That's why I can't say Miami surprised me. It shocked me, yes. It enraged me. But surprised me? Number. Because my parents had been crossing lines my whole life, always deciding what was best for me, always telling me I'd thank them later. This time, it wasn't my life they interfered in. It was my daughter's. And that was a mistake they would never come back from. When I think back to that night, what I remember most isn't the fury, it's the silence. The kind of silence where your heart is thundering in your chest, but the world around you is still, where you know if you let yourself feel even half of what's inside, you'll crack open. So I didn't. I stayed on the phone with Ella. Her voice was small, hiccuping, asking me over and over, "Mommy, are you still there?" "I'm here," I told her. "I'm not going anywhere. Just keep talking to me, sweetheart." We talked about nothing. Curtains, the neighbor's dog barking, whether she'd had anything to eat. Every answer came broken, between sobs. But I kept her going until I heard Paula's voice in the background. And then Ella's sobs changed. Relief this time. Paula. "I've got her." I closed my eyes. My grip on the phone loosened, but the fury in my chest only got sharper. Because while Paula was doing what family should do, showing up, my own parents were patting themselves on the back for abandoning my child. The next step was obvious. Get to Miami. But I wasn't thinking clearly enough to plan. I was still shaking when I called Stephen. He picked up from work, his voice steady. "Hey, everything okay?" I told him. "Everything." There was a pause. Then his voice changed, harder, sharper. "Book the flight," he said. "I'll take time off." "I don't care if it's unpaid. We're going together." I tried to argue. "I can handle this. You don't need to lose money." But he cut me off. "Dana, you're not doing this alone. Not with them. Not with him. End of discussion." And that was Stephen. Quiet most of the time. But when he decided something, it was decided. Within an hour, we had tickets for the earliest flight. By the time we landed in Miami, Paula had already taken Ella home with her. Her house wasn't big, a modest little bungalow with peeling paint on the shutters. But the second I walked through the door, it felt like a fortress. Ella ran straight into my arms, her face blotchy, her small hands gripping my shirt like she was afraid I'd disappear again. I held her so tight I felt her heartbeat through her chest. Stephen wrapped his arms around both of us. and Paula stood in the doorway, watching, her eyes soft. She hadn't changed much. Still practical, still brisk. When I was little, she'd been the one who slipped me candy when Mom wasn't looking. The one who told me I wasn't crazy when I said Brianna always got more attention. We'd drifted apart, but standing there in her kitchen, I remembered why I'd trusted her. "Stay here," she insisted, pulling out the kettle. "I don't care if the guest room's small." "It'll fit the three of you just fine," I started to protest. Miami hotels weren't exactly hard to find, but Paula waved me off. "Nonsense. You need family right now. Real family." So we stayed. The guest room barely fit the bed, and the mattress springs squeaked every time one of us moved, but it didn't matter. It was safe. Ella curled between me and Stephen that night, finally falling asleep after hours of whispering, "You're here, right? You're not leaving?" I promised her I wasn't. Over and over until she finally believed me. The next day, Paula made tea, and we sat around her small kitchen table. The sunlight came in through lace curtains, and for a moment, it almost felt normal. Almost. Ella drew pictures with Paula's old crayons while we talked. Paula shook her head. "I wish I could say I was surprised. But I'm not. Your parents, they've always believed they know best." "Best?" I said dryly. "Best would have been keeping their mouths shut." Stephen reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "She's safe now." "That's what matters." I nodded, but in my chest, I was already making decisions. Because safe wasn't enough. Not anymore. That afternoon, I opened my laptop. For years, I'd kept the money flowing. Monthly transfers to my parents to cover part of their mortgage. Payments for utilities. Little extras for Brianna's kids when she whined about how hard things were. It had become routine, automatic. But now, staring at the numbers on my screen, all I felt was rage. I clicked through each account and shut them down. No more mortgage help. No more utility payments. No more cash for Brianna. It took less than 15 minutes. 15 minutes to end years of obligation, guilt, and habit. Stephen leaned against the doorframe, watching me. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just nodded once, solid and sure. It was my choice, my line in the sand. And it felt good. That night, as I lay awake with Ella's small hand curled into mine, I made another decision. They would never see her again. Not my parents, not Brianna, not anyone who thought it was acceptable to abandon her on a stranger's doorstep. I didn't need a courtroom or a shouting match. I didn't even need to announce it. I just knew. They were out of her life. And I thought that was the end of it. But what I didn't know, not yet, was how quickly their lives were about to unravel. The first call came 3 days after we got back home. I was folding laundry, the ordinary kind of chore that feels like it belongs to another life now, when my phone lit up with Brianna's name. I should have let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. I swiped. "Hello?" Her voice came through sharp, ragged. "What did you do?" I froze. "Excuse me?" "I've been suspended, Dana." "Suspended? You called my school, didn't you? You told them I abandoned Ella." For a second, I couldn't even find words. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "The principal called me in. Said there were complaints. Said parents were talking. That I'm a risk around kids. I know it was you." I sat down slowly, pressing the phone to my ear. Suspended. And the first thought that flickered across my mind, dry, bitter, was, well, karma works faster than HR departments. "I didn't call your school, Brianna," I said evenly. "I didn't say a word to them." "Liar." She spat it like poison. "You've always been jealous of me. You've been waiting for a chance to ruin me." Jealous. That old tune again. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "If you got yourself suspended, that's on you. Don't look at me for someone to blame." She cursed under her breath and hung up. I sat there a long while, staring at the wall, suspended, for abandoning Ella, and I hadn't even lifted a finger. The truth came out later. I checked Facebook, the family WhatsApp thread, all the places relatives gossip when they think it's harmless. There it was. Messages, photos, chatter, the story spreading like wildfire. Paula had told a few cousins, wanting to make sure everyone knew the truth. From there, it spread further. Because people love a story, don't they? And nothing gets around faster than family scandal. By the time it reached the school, it wasn't rumor anymore. It was fact, confirmed by too many voices to ignore. Brianna was suspended while they investigated. I won't lie. It felt good. Not because I wanted her unemployed, but because for once, the truth had done the work for me. The second call came 2 weeks later. This time it was my parents. I didn't pick up right away. I let it ring out, then watched it light up again. And again. Finally, I sighed and answered. "Dana," my father said, like nothing had happened. "We think there's a problem with the bank. The mortgage payment didn't come through this month." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "There's no problem. What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, calm and flat, "I stopped paying." 2 weeks ago, silence. Then my mother's sharp intake of breath. "What? Why would you—" "Because you left my daughter crying on a stranger's doorstep. Because you thought that was acceptable. Because you've treated me like a problem my whole life. And because you never once checked on me unless money was involved." My father's voice hardened. "We're family, Dana." Families help each other. I almost laughed. My throat was tight, but the words came out steady. Family doesn't abandon children. You didn't just cross a line. You burned it. I don't owe you a thing. The silence on their end was heavy, stretched thin. Finally, my mother tried again. "You'll regret this one day." "No," I said softly. "The only thing I regret is thinking you'd ever change." And I hung up. That night, Stephen asked how it went. "They noticed," I said, dry as dust. "Apparently their mortgage company has higher standards than they do as grandparents." He didn't smile, but I saw it in his eyes. Pride. Solid, steady pride. And here's the thing. After that call, I expected to feel wrecked, guilty, torn apart. But I didn't. I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't propping them up. I wasn't buying their approval with transfers and top-ups. I wasn't feeding the very people who had cut me down my whole life. I was free. And for Ella, that meant safety. "You'd think the story ends there, wouldn't you?" Brianna suspended. My parents cut off. Me, finally free of their hold. But it didn't. Because they weren't done yet. And neither was I. A few weeks after I cut them off, the knocking started. It was early evening, the kind of quiet time when the house feels safe. Stephen in the living room with Ella, me finishing dishes. And then came the sharp rattle on the door. When I opened it, there they were. My parents. Not the confident, self-assured people who'd told me I'd thank them later. They looked smaller. My mother's eyes darted everywhere but mine. My father's jaw clenched tight. And behind them, Brianna, red-eyed, chewing on her lip. They didn't say sorry. Not really. They said things like, "We were just trying to help. We thought it was best. We didn't mean for it to go that way." And eventually, the real reason for the visit slipped out. The mortgage. They were behind. They needed help. I listened. Calm. Silent. Let them twist in the awkward pauses. Then I shook my head. No. Not anymore. My mother's mouth opened, ready to protest. My father started with, "But we're family." And that's when I cut him off. Family doesn't abandon a 7-year-old on a stranger's doorstep. The words came out steady, not loud, and that quiet hit harder than shouting ever could. They left not long after, muttering about how ungrateful I was, and that was the last time they stood on my porch. After that, the dominoes fell quickly. Brianna's suspension at school turned into termination. She'd lost the trust of the parents, and once that was gone, there was no getting it back. Word spreads fast in communities. Too fast. My parents didn't recover either. Without my money covering the gaps, the mortgage slipped further and further behind until it collapsed altogether. They had to sell the house, downsize, and move into something smaller. Bitter about it every step of the way. They'd gambled everything on controlling me, and when they lost me, they lost it all. As for Preston, I never spoke to him. Not once. But through someone who still moved in his circle, I heard the gossip. That young woman, the one who opened the door to Ella that night, who had no idea what she was stepping into, left him. She'd found out Ella was his daughter, and she hadn't known before. Smart woman, I thought. She saw what I'd seen years ago, a man who thought hiding a child was normal, who thought money made up for character. She packed her bags and walked. It wasn't my victory, but it was satisfying all the same. And me? I won't pretend it was easy. Cutting off your family never is. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I'd gone too far, if maybe I should have forgiven them one more time. But then I'd remember Ella's voice on the phone, her sobs, her words. They left me, and I knew. I hadn't gone too far. I'd finally gone far enough. Now, it's quiet. Stephen's steady beside me. Ella safe, laughing again. Paula back in our lives in small ways. Phone calls, visits, a reminder that not all family turns poisonous. So that's the story. What do you think? Did I go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more. On a family cruise, my daughter spent 3 hours waiting alone in the hot sun, while the rest of the family went on a private excursion without her. They acted like it was no big deal. Then she said, "Will you do what you promised?" I said, "Yes." By dinner, the whole family was in complete panic mode. We found her standing near the edge of the dock, towel in her hands, goggles dangling from one wrist like she'd forgotten they were there. She wasn't crying. That made it worse. My husband, Daniel, saw her first. "Celia." She looked up when she heard his voice. No running hug, no outburst, just a small nod, like she was confirming what she already suspected. We were back, and she was still alone. We walked toward her, slow at first, unsure of what we were even looking at. The sun was brutal that day. Her cheeks were flushed. Her hair stuck to her forehead in messy curls. She'd clearly been out there a while. "Where is everyone?" I asked. "They went," she said. I didn't understand. "They left already?" "They left without me." She said it like it wasn't surprising, like she'd practiced saying it out loud while she waited. "They gave your spot to someone else?" Daniel asked. Celia nodded. "Asher threw a fit. He wanted to go. Aunt Jill gave him my spot and told me to be the mature one." Aunt Jill is my sister. Her son Asher is 9. Celia is 11 and had been talking about this excursion, snorkeling, cliff jumping, boat rides, for weeks. "She said I could read or use my phone," Celia added. "But my battery died, so I just waited." I looked at her, sun in her eyes, towel around her shoulders, trying very hard not to seem small. Her lips were cracked. Her arms were pink from the heat. Her ponytail had wilted halfway down her back. She'd clearly been there a while. Daniel didn't say anything. just stood next to me very still, his jaw clenched, the way it does when he's trying not to break something. "She didn't even ask me," Celia said quietly. "She just told me to understand." There was a pause. Then she looked at me, not angry, not even sad, just tired, and said, "Does it count? Will you do what you promised?" "Yes," I said. "I will." Celia smiled. "Cool." 3 hours later, the family chat exploded, and by dinner, everyone was shouting in a panic. People talk about adoption like it's just a form you fill out. You decide, you apply, and one day you pick up a child and call it a family. It wasn't like that for us. I spent 4 years trying to get pregnant. 4 years of vitamins and ovulation trackers and whispered optimism. 4 years of sitting in waiting rooms with one hand on my stomach like I could will it to work. We tried everything, except giving up. Somewhere around year 2, I started having recurring dreams where I was already a mom. Not pregnant, just a mom. The kid was always different. Sometimes a toddler, sometimes older. Sometimes she'd look like me, sometimes not at all. But she always called me mom like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'd wake up crying, then get up and try again. By year 4, we were sitting in a social worker's office talking about foster to adopt. She warned us it wouldn't be easy, that it could take a long time, that there were no guarantees. We nodded like we understood, but we didn't. Not really. And then there was Celia. She came to us at 6 years old. Brown eyes, tightly coiled curls, arms folded across her chest like she was holding something in. The first night she was in our house, she didn't speak. Not even when I offered her ice cream. She just looked at me like she was already waiting to be disappointed. She came from a hard background. I won't tell her story for her, but I'll say this. She had every reason not to trust the world. At night, I'd hear her crying softly through the walls. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The kind kids do when they're trying not to bother anyone. I'd sit outside her door and whisper that she was safe now, that she could take all the time she needed. It took months for her to call me anything at all. When she finally whispered Mom for the first time, she said it like a test. I pretended I didn't hear it, just smiled to myself while doing dishes, then went into the bathroom and cried for 10 minutes straight. Daniel took longer to win her over. She was wary of him at first, but he never pushed. Just showed up every single day, sat on the floor while she colored, let her help him fix things that didn't really need fixing, held out his hand every morning and let her decide whether or not to take it. She did, eventually. One day she walked up behind him while he was changing a light bulb and said, "Be careful, Dad." He dropped the bulb. We both pretended it was an accident. We didn't know if we'd get to keep her. That was the hardest part. Every court date felt like holding our breath. Every phone call from her caseworker made my heart race. I wanted to love her like forever, but I was terrified of the day someone might take her away. And then came the day the judge said yes. The paperwork was done. The ink was dry. The caseworker hugged us and called me Mom, like it had always been true. Celia was officially our daughter. We went out for ice cream, and she got every single topping she wanted, even the weird ones that didn't match. She grinned the whole time. We've never forgotten what it took to get her. I think that's why it hurts so much, watching people act like she's lucky to have us, like we did her some noble favor by taking her in, as if we're saints for loving our own child. The truth is, we're the lucky ones. Every single day. We know it. We feel it. But not everyone sees her that way, and that's where the cracks started. The first time it happened, I told myself I was imagining it. It was at my sister Jill's house, a few months after Celia's adoption had gone through. The whole family was gathered for Thanksgiving. Turkey, stuffing, my mom's usual passive-aggressive pie commentary. The kids were running around in matching shirts Jill had ordered from Etsy. Each one had their name on the back in gold script. except Celia didn't have one. She wore a plain pink sweatshirt. When she asked if maybe hers got lost, Jill laughed and said, "Oh, I didn't think you'd want one. You know, because she's more introverted." I started to say something. Then my mom gave me that look, the one that says, "Don't ruin the day." So I swallowed it. Told myself it wasn't a big deal. That next time, I'd speak up. But next time came. And then another. And another. There was the group text about the family reunion, sent to everyone but me. The Christmas slideshow with photos of every niece and nephew, including ones I barely knew, except Celia. The birthday party where every kid got a goodie bag filled with toys and treats, and Celia's had a broken crayon, a pen, and a wrapped peppermint. "She's older," Jill said. "The others are still into that stuff." She was 9. Even when Celia tried to connect, it felt like she was being held at arm's length. The other cousins would form little clusters, whispering and giggling. Celia would hover just outside the group, holding her cup or her plate like it might earn her an invitation. Sometimes she'd catch my eye across the room and smile like everything was fine. Sometimes she wouldn't smile at all. We talked about it, Daniel and I, quietly, after she went to bed. At first, we debated whether we were reading too much into things, whether maybe it was just the usual family weirdness. But then came the night Celia asked if she was just visiting our life, like maybe this was a trial and we hadn't told her. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I don't think they think I'm real family." That was when I stopped pretending. Daniel sat her down that night and told her something we should have said sooner. "If they ever make you feel small again," he said, "we'll walk away. No more second chances. We don't need their permission to protect you." Celia didn't cry. She just nodded. "Cool." When the cruise came up, I hesitated. It was a big trip. 5 days, shared cabins, meal plans, activities with cousins. I didn't want her getting hurt, but she was excited. She kept asking if she could bring her camera, if there would be snorkeling, if maybe the other kids would finally get to know her better. She said, "It'll be different this time." She packed days in advance, picked out her goggles and practiced jumping into the pool so she'd be ready. She kept saying, "I think they'll really like me this time." The morning of the excursion, we all met for breakfast. There were 2 excursions that day, one calm and scenic, one more adventurous. Celia picked the adventurous one. So did the other kids. So did Jill and a few adults. Daniel and I went with the calmer group. We kissed Celia goodbye, reminded her to wear sunscreen, told her to have fun. She waved and said, "I will." She was so proud to be going without us, so proud to be one of them. And then they left her, told her there wasn't room, that Asher wanted to go and he was younger so she should understand. They left her by the dock with her towel and her goggles and a dying phone. She waited 3 hours, and when we found her, she didn't cry, she didn't complain. She just looked at me and asked if it counted. It did. Everything she'd put up with, everything we'd brushed off, everything we thought she was strong enough to shrug away, it all came to a point right there on that dock. And when she asked, "Will you do what you promised?" I said, "Yes." No hesitation, no looking around for a softer option, no more being the bigger person. 3 hours later, the group chat exploded, and by dinner, the family was in panic mode. We didn't go back to the ship. We walked Celia to the hotel just past the boardwalk, booked a room, and didn't say a word in the elevator. She peeled off her towel like it was heavy. Her arms were red from the sun. I helped her rinse off in the shower and handed her one of Daniel's oversized t-shirts to wear. Daniel ordered 3 milkshakes and 2 baskets of fries from room service. Celia drank hers in one long sip, then fell asleep on the bed without even asking what was next. By the time she closed her eyes, Daniel had already canceled our remaining days on the cruise. We lost the money. Didn't care. That night, we found a flyer in the hotel lobby for a private snorkeling charter, the exact same kind of excursion she'd missed. It left the next morning. Daniel booked it for 3. She woke up smiling when we told her. No one from the family had messaged us directly yet, just vague texts in the group chat. "Where did you go? Everything okay? We were looking for you at dinner." We ignored them, and that's when the panic started. At first it was just Jill. "Hey, you were supposed to do the dolphin swim sign-ins tomorrow? Can someone please explain what's going on? Where is Lauren?" Then my mom jumped in. "We had everything planned so carefully. This is putting so much pressure on Jill. Can someone just call them?" Then, silence. Like they realized something. Daniel and I were sitting on the edge of the hotel bed watching Celia dip cookies into her milk when his phone lit up with 12 missed calls in 10 minutes. My mom, my sister, my aunt. Then my mom again. Then the cousins started chiming in. "Wait, Lauren and Daniel actually left? Are you serious? What about the group snorkeling on Thursday? We needed their signatures." Then one of the parents dropped this bomb. "Guys, the kids can't do the water park day without 2 more chaperones. We literally can't go." That's when the group chat started melting down in real time. Who's watching the toddlers now? What do we do about the group booking refund? My kids are crying because they've been looking forward to this all year. The last one was from Jill. "You've ruined this entire trip." That was the one that made Daniel laugh. The low kind of laugh. The kind that only happens when someone finally proves your point for you. We didn't respond. The next morning, we saw blurry photos from the cruise's group chat. Half the kids standing around in street clothes, looking confused in front of the ziplining banner they weren't allowed to enter. A message from a staff member had apparently made it clear. Too many kids, not enough adults. Rules were rules. Jill tried to negotiate. The staff didn't budge. "It's not safe," they said. "We can't let them in." No refunds. By midday, Jill was texting us directly, over and over again. "We're not joking anymore. You owe us. At least pay for the excursion you bailed on. People are furious." We didn't answer. Daniel put his phone on airplane mode. Celia asked if we could go get snow cones. Later that evening, we got a quiet message from Melissa, my cousin's wife. She said, "I saw what happened. I don't know the whole story, but it didn't feel right." That was the first moment I realized it wasn't just us. We didn't post anything, didn't explain or defend, but the silence around the story, it wasn't holding. I could feel it. People were asking quiet questions, wondering what really happened. Still, Jill was already spinning it. She had a head start, and she knew it. By the time the cruise ended, we could feel the tension building, but we didn't know yet how far she'd go. 3 days after the cruise ended, Jill sent us a long email with the subject line, "What you did to this family." It read like a breakup letter, and a billing statement had a nervous breakdown. She said we'd ruined the vacation for everyone, that our stunt caused excursions to be canceled, that we were financially responsible for the disruption and should do the right thing by reimbursing the group. She even included a spreadsheet. There were line items for dolphin swims, the canceled group dinner, a full-day adventure park package she claimed only existed because we agreed to all pitch in. There was a section called Emotional Toll, and I wish I were kidding. Our parents backed her up. My mom texted me late that night. "This is getting out of hand. Just pay your part and let it go." Then another, 2 minutes later. "Do it for the kids." Ah, yes. The kids. The ones we abandoned by protecting our daughter. We didn't respond. Not yet. Then came the public round. Jill started messaging our extended family. Not just people from the cruise. Everyone. She posted in the big family group chat about how devastated she was, said she was blindsided by our behavior, claimed we walked off the cruise because of a minor seating error, and refused to communicate like adults. She said we embarrassed her in front of her kids. She ended it with, "Some people would rather destroy their family than admit they overreacted." I didn't say a word. Neither did Daniel. For a full day, it felt like maybe we'd miscalculated. No one was rushing to defend us. Some relatives left the chat quietly. Others posted vague messages like, "Family is complicated," or "Let's not fight." Celia noticed the silence too. She didn't say anything, but I caught her checking my phone once or twice, like she was watching the world tilt in slow motion. Then Daniel replied. Not in the group chat, just one message. One reply to Jill, copied to everyone she had looped in. It said, "We paid for every activity we used, and many we didn't, including the one you denied to our daughter after she planned for it for weeks. We left because you made it clear again that she didn't matter to you. If this ruined your trip, that's not our fault. It's the cost of your choices." No emojis, no sign-off, just that. We thought that would be the end of it. Instead, it was the beginning. A few hours later, I got a message from Melissa, my cousin's wife. She'd been quiet until now. She said, "I wanted to tell you privately. I saw what happened that morning. Celia standing by herself. Asher running ahead yelling about how he took her place. I felt sick. I'm sorry I didn't say something then." Then another message came in, from Rachel, one of the other parents. My daughter asked me why Celia wasn't allowed to come. She said Jill told them Celia wasn't really a cousin. I'm so sorry. I didn't know it had been like this for so long. It snowballed from there. People started speaking up, quietly at first, then louder. Someone shared that they'd heard Jill joke at dinner once that Celia was Daniel's bonus child. Someone else said they noticed how Celia was always left out of group photos, how she never had a name card, how her gifts were always generic, last-minute things you grab at the airport. And then Nora, Jill's niece, spoke up. She posted in the group chat for everyone to see. "We all know this wasn't a one-time thing. You've been treating Celia like she's not one of us since day one. I'm not pretending anymore." That cracked it open. By the end of the week, the family was split clean down the middle. Some stayed with Jill and my parents, claimed it was all being blown out of proportion, that we were too sensitive, that kids don't notice that stuff. Others, people I hadn't heard from in months, sent messages saying they were proud of us, that they wished they'd stood up earlier, that they were glad someone finally had. And Celia? She got texts from a few of the cousins she'd never been close to. Ones who said, "I'm sorry." Ones who said, "I miss you." Ones who said, "I'd really like to hang out sometime, if it's okay." We stopped replying to Jill and my parents entirely. We blocked them a few days later after my mom sent one final message that said, "You're tearing this family apart over one hurt feeling." One? Celia read it over my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just got up and went to her room. The next morning, Daniel and I sat down at the kitchen table with her and asked if she wanted to invite anyone over this summer. She said, "Can I pick?" We said yes. She smiled, named 4 cousins, all people who had reached out. We made a group chat, started planning a weekend trip. Small. Just us. And it felt good. Quiet. Clean. Like starting over. We didn't get justice, but we got clarity. We didn't get revenge, but we got peace. And Celia? She stopped hovering around the edges of rooms. She stopped checking her phone for approval that wasn't coming. She stopped asking if people forgot her name. She walks different now. Straighter. Calmer. Like she knows she belongs, because we made a world where that's true. Not by force, but by finally saying, "This is enough." and meaning it. It's been 5 years. Celia just turned 16 last week. She spent the day at the beach with 3 of her cousins. Yes, those cousins. The ones who stuck around. The ones who saw through the noise and chose kindness. They brought cupcakes, not out of guilt, but because they wanted to. One of them gave her a book with a handwritten note inside. She read it twice. She still remembers that cruise. Not the ship or the excursions, but the dock, the heat, the towel she wouldn't put down. She remembers what it felt like to be left. But more than that, she remembers what happened next. She remembers what it meant when we chose her. And so do I. We lost a lot of people that day, but we didn't lose ourselves. Still, sometimes I wonder, did we go too far? Or did we just finally stop shrinking? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe and tap the notification bell.